let's start with the same topic. Let's continue with the same topic which we have left in the last class. So I hope you have understood each and everything in the last class. Uh, if still you have any kind of problem, if you still have something to ask, so you can ask me. Any one of you, if you have any problem, you can just ask me. It's okay. Are you all okay with the last class lecture?
Yes, ma'am.
No problem, no questions.
No, ma'am.
So I would like to ask you people then, what is the concept behind the cellular system? Why cellular system? Anyone of you, can you answer me please? If you have no question, you have understood everything, so why can't you reply me back? Yes, please. Mohammed Azhar.
Yes, ma'am.
You have understood, beta, this Saklan.
Yes, ma'am.
So what do you know about cellular system?
मैम सेलुलर सिस्टम में हमने ये चीज़ें पढ़ी थी कि हमारे पास हम मोर सब्सक्राइबर्स को ला रहे थे, हमारे पास आइसोट्रोपिक जो था उसकी रेंज थी, काफ़ी सारी चीज़ें हमने पढ़ी थी। मैम एक्सप्लेन कर दूँ सारी चीज़ें?
I'm just asking what is why cellular system?
मैम सेलुलर सिस्टम हमें मोर सब्सक्राइबर ला के दे रहा था और हमारे पास जो बेस स्टेशन था, जो हाई पावर ट्रांसमीटर था, उसको हम छोटे छोटे सेल्स में उसको हम डिवाइड कर रहे थे।
किसको डिवाइड कर रहे थे? हम बेस स्टेशन को डिवाइड कर रहे थे।
यस मैम, हाई पावर ट्रांसमीटर जो था उसको हम उसकी जगह पे हम रिप्लेस कर रहे थे।
हम ज्योग्राफिकल एरिया को डिवाइड कर रहे थे, नॉट द बेस स्टेशन. We have divided
Yes,
the
ma'am.
geographical area into the smaller units, into smaller parts, and that smaller part are known as cell. We are just replacing high power transmitter into low power transmitter. Okay, we have divided
Yes,
the
ma'am.
geographical area, not the base station. Base station cannot be divided, can be replaced to smaller bases, low power base station. You getting my point, Saklan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, anyone else?
Ma'am, the same question.
If you want to answer me anything about it, you can. So you people don't have any question, okay? You don't have any query, you can ask me if you have. Otherwise, I will start the lecture now. Okay, if you don't have, let's start the lecture. See, we have just gone through this, the introduction of cellular system. We have understood the reason of conceiving the cellular system, for reason for developing the cellular system, which few second or minutes back, Saklan has somehow explains it to us. So rather than that, we understood that what was the idea, how it came into being. You can say that its architecture, how the cellular system is designed. Okay, so this was somehow the part of the architecture, that we have converted this geographical area into smaller units, and that are called cells, and we have replaced high power into low power. There was also a reason behind it, that why we have converted them from high to low. Okay, we have already studied this in the last class. This is the same slide that just like the previous one, we have just understood the definition of cellular technology. Other than that, we have already understood this definition. Okay, then we came to architecture. We all know what is the architecture. It's a layout, it's the design of the cellular system. We're talking about how the overall system is designed. Okay, so we understand what a cell is, right? What a base station is, where the base station can be located, and what that cells are known as, considering their the location of the base station, how these cells are termed as, right? And what kind of antenna is used in these kind of cells, right? And then we came to this footprint. What is footprint? I have made you clear in the last class that what actually a footprint of the cell is, and what is the nature of the radiator, what is the nature of the radiation pattern, okay, and why it is expected to be spherical. Okay, so these all things we have already understood in the last class. Then we came to cluster. What is a cluster? Can any one of you define what is a cluster other than Saklan? Student, can you define what is a cluster?
मैम ग्रुप ऑफ सेल्स आपने बताया था
Group of cells. Like what kind of cell?
Group of
Yes, please. No, no one knows this.
I am a group of cells.
Group of cells, but what kind of cells?
मैम जिनकी फ्रीक्वेंसी सेम नहीं थी
Yes, the cells which have different frequency. Group of cell with different frequencies, not the same frequencies, right? And this is the reason we have made the cellular system in the way that we can accommodate more subscribers. And how we do it, we will see in the next the coming slides that we learn today. So what is a cluster? Cluster is the group of cell with disjoint frequency, with, or you can say with overlapping, non-overlapping frequency. You can also say non-similar or different frequencies, right? So the cell with the different frequency, the group of cells with different frequency, with non-overlapping frequency, or you can say, or disjoint frequencies, are known as a cluster, right? So here you can see that there are different cells. If you can see the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these numbers are actually denoting frequencies, right? So when these numbers are repeating, that means that it is not the same cluster. Not this cluster has been changed. So in our geographical area, you have seen that all the way there are cells. Okay, the geographical area is divided into cell. If you can see in this slide, you can see the cells. Okay, this is the same geographical area. This one. Okay, this is this, and these both are the same geographical area, but over here there is no division of the area, but here there is a division of area, because this is the this is the design of the cellular system, right? So here you can see there are many cells, right? So these cells actually, these are shown in the hexagon shape. These cells are making up clusters. These are placed as cluster, okay? And by how we can say they are placed in cluster, that means when we say they are placed as clusters, so this means that there are different frequencies in different cells, right? So as these clusters are placed we have once decided that what is the size of the cluster, that has been decided. After that, this same cluster is repeated. It's not like that. I have told you in the last class that we have cluster of different sizes, but that doesn't mean that throughout the area we will have this cluster of different sizes. No, we will not have the cluster of different sizes. We will have the cluster of same sizes. Once the size is decided, the same cluster is repeated in the overall geographical area. Okay, so this is the step which is taking us to our final destination, to our final aim, to our final goal of the cellular system. The reason of the cellular system, it is making us reach there. Are you getting my point, students? If you have any problem, you can ask me in between, no problem.
Ma'am, we can have the same numbers in the cluster too.
Louder, beta,
Like,
louder.
do we have, like, is it necessary to have different numbers, like different sizes, or we can have the same numbers too?
You are talking about the size of the cluster.
Yes, ma'am, like the numbers that we have in the middle of a
The
cell.
size of the
Can they,
cluster will always be the same. Okay, the size of the cluster will always be the same. If it is decided to be this be 7, means there are 7 cells in a cluster. This means the overall geographical area will have the same cluster, right? You will decide just one cluster size, and that cluster size will be repeated to overall geographical area, in the overall geographical area. Okay, it's not like we are using different we are using cluster of different sizes in the same geographical area. Independency, we will learn about this in the coming slide. The question that you have raised, you will understood it in the coming slide, but still you have asked me the question, I will let you know about it. So actually, whenever there is an installation of the base station for giving the signal, for giving the coverage to a certain area, so what is kept in consideration is that uh, what kind of an area it is, right? How populated that area is it, right? Again, we come up to the number of subscribers, right? What kind of area it is, how many people would use the cell phones over there, right? So keeping in mind all these things, then only the cluster size is different is decided. Okay, before any project, any installation of a system, there's always a logical thinking, there's always you can say there's always a calculation, right? So before that, we need to understand all the things, we need to keep in our mind all the things about that area, what kind of a geographical area it is, how many people would be there, how much populated it is. Okay, and if it is highly populated, so it is necessary that all the people in that geographical area will use the cell phone or not. Okay, so these are all kept in mind, and then this uh, cluster size is defined. Okay, so once this cluster size is defined, okay, then only we start implementation of the design, right? Before deciding all these things, we cannot just implement the overall design. Once it is decided, it's if it is decided that the cluster size would be 7, This means the overall geographical area would be covered with the cluster size 7. And that cluster and that base, those all base stations will provide the the signals, the coverage to that area. Did you get the answer of your question? Yes, beta.
Yes, ma'am. But I just want to ask one more
Your
thing that
voice is not clear. It's very low.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
जी बेटा
Hello,
बोले.
ma'am. Can we have, like, if we decide a size, like for example, it's 7, and then can we put same frequencies too, or it has to be different frequencies?
See, first of all, you tell me what's the definition of cluster. The definition
Ma'am,
of
like,
cluster is simple, that we have cells, there's a combination of cells with different frequency, right? So I said,
yes,
I already told you this, that once you have decided the overall thing, that is a cluster. What is a cluster? Cluster is the combination of cells with different frequencies, right? Now we will repeat the same cluster. Same cluster means the cluster with the same frequencies, okay? The cluster of the same size and the frequencies will be repeated, right? It's not like that if we have different frequencies over here and again we will have different frequencies over here. No, we will have the same frequency in this cluster and in this cluster. Are you getting it? We have cells with
yes,
different frequencies. In a cluster, we have cells with different frequency. Once these cluster are repeating, okay, once these, this thing is repeating, that means the overall design of the cluster is repeating. The frequency, the size, everything, okay? If we will have the same frequency, if we will have different frequency in the overall geographical area, so again वो problem आ जाती है कि we have limited frequency and we have to accommodate more subscriber. आपके पास frequency limited है, तो how would you have different frequencies in each of the cluster? The frequencies will be repeated. I mean to say the cluster will be repeated. Once the cluster is decided, you will have the same cluster. Okay, same cluster mean the cluster with the same frequencies, the cluster with the same size will be repeated throughout the geographical area. समझ
okay,
आ
ma'am.
रही है आपको मेरी बात?
जी जी.
जी बेटा.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
I myself was coming to that point in the coming slide, but since you asked me the question, I've just replied to you. Otherwise, we were coming over there. You will see that you will understand it more clearly in the coming slides. Okay, so you have very less time for this session. So I would say to the CR that please take the pictures of the participant, and as the session ends, you should all rejoin it again. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. These are the different size of the cluster. You can see over here. We have, I think we have already started this slide in the last class or not. I don't know, I don't remember about that, but again I will repeat this to you. We have clusters. We can have cluster of different sizes, but the cluster of different And if I'm saying that we can have cluster of different sizes, that doesn't mean that we can have the cluster of different sizes in a same geographical area. Okay, again I would say that all these things depend upon the area that we need to give the coverage, right? Here you can see this is a cluster. What is the size of the cluster in this image? Can anyone of you point out?
3 ma'am.
Yes, here the size of the cluster is 3, because you can see this black mark and you can also see the different colors. Since the color are repeating after these, there are 3 colors and these colors are repeating again and again. That means this is a cluster of size 3, and you can also see the frequency marking over here, F1, F2, F3. These 3 are different frequencies. These different frequencies are showing us that this is a cluster of 3 cells having different frequencies. The definition of cluster, they are defining the definition of cluster, that these 3 have different frequencies. After that, we have the same frequencies. There is again the repetition of the same cluster. So that means that this is the cluster of size 3. Similarly, if you can see over here, there is a cluster of size. What is the size of the cluster over here?
9 ma'am.
9, yes. And over here we have 7, and here we have 4. Okay. So this is showing us, this slide is showing us the size of the cluster actually, right? So now we have this different sizes of the cluster. Okay, this is the same similar slide like this one. So in this you can see you have the same images which you have in the last slide. So here it is saying size of cluster can be 3, 4, 7, 9, 12, 21. It's not necessary that you should have only these sizes, but up till now these sizes of the cluster are used. Okay, again I would say that the size of the cluster depends upon the population, the area, okay, and the need. Okay, how many subscriber would likely be there, right? So now there is something known as frequency reuse. Okay, now what do you understand? What would be frequency reuse? What is frequency reuse? Any idea about it? If you have understood all these things since the last class, so does anything comes in your mind? And what is frequency reuse? Anything? You can share it to me if anything comes in your mind about frequency reuse.
मैम अगर फ्रीक्वेंसी रिपीट हो रही है तो ये रीयूज हो गया.
Yes, good, very good. Since I've told you before, मैंने अभी आपको यही बताया था. When one of the girl asked me this question about the cluster size and the frequency, that the same cluster would be repeated. Okay, the same cluster is repeated throughout the geographical area, and repeating the same cluster means that the same frequency, the same size, everything is being repeated. It's not change, right? So this frequencies are being repeated. That means that frequency are being reused. Okay, are you getting my point? If the frequencies are being,
Yes ma'am.
if we have the same cluster again and again, that means that the frequency is being reused. The same frequency is being reused in the next cluster. Okay, no matter how many cluster we have in that geographical area, depending upon its size, but these cluster are having same frequencies again and again. Okay, not within one cluster. We are not having the same frequency. The frequency is not being reused in the same cluster, but in different cluster. Okay, just like I told you, if there is one cluster, there will be different frequencies in within one cluster, in a particular cluster. Okay, but in different cluster, the frequency is being reused. The frequencies are same. Okay, same cluster, we have different frequencies, but in different cluster, we have same frequencies. It's a little bit confusing, but if you understand all the things that I've already made you understood, so you will understand this also. Anyone of you have a problem regarding this?
No, ma'am.
Only you are
No.
answering. What about other students? I'm telling you, it's very confusing. All the class should understood and all the class should participate in this. So if you have understood what I have said just now, that if you have a cluster, as the cluster definition of the cluster says us that we have different frequencies, there's a combination of cells with a different frequency, that is defining a cluster. Okay, so just a cluster, in just a within a one cluster, a particular cluster would have different frequencies, but the same frequencies would be repeated in the different cluster will have the repetition of the frequencies, but in a particular cluster you will have the different frequencies. I'm saying you this again and again, so just you understand these things. Okay, it's very necessary for you to understand. Now how it is happening, we will learn the next slide. Now see, if you remember what did I said in the starting of these lecture, when we were talking about the definition, we were talking about the concept of the cellular system. We said we stated that we have limited frequencies. Okay, so if we have a limited frequency, how would how would we can have different frequencies in different cell? I mean to say that how we can have different clusters with non-repeating, with non-reusing, frequencies, if we have limited frequencies in the very beginning, right? But still we have to accommodate more subscribers, so we are repeating our frequencies. Okay, we are reusing our frequencies in different cluster so that we can accommodate the user with these limited frequency. Now you understand what was the logic behind all that concept that we learned in the previous class. Did you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
only student, the two students are just understanding, saying me yes, ma'am, again.